What do you do when you're faced with a really difficult situation and you just feel like you just want to frigging give up? I was literally lying in Turkey at the clinic where I'm going through my cancer treatment after something like 5 hours of intensive treatment, drips, infusions. I've been through an oxygen chamber and I'm lying in this tent, which is basically heating my body up to 45 degrees. And the idea being that it breaks down the cancer above 42 degrees. And I had reached my limit. That evening before, the flight that we'd taken over to get to Turkey had been delayed so badly that I arrived at the apartment, the Airbnb, something like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And we were due to be in the actual clinic to start the treatment at 8 o'clock that day. So I was absolutely buggered. I had nothing left inside me. And that was the point that I just dug in to an approach that I've used for years. And I just felt compelled while I was lying there, I need to capture this. And actually, on the way back, I started to write up on this in one of my newsletters. And I just desperately wanted to capture this on camera. So you got a sense of what I went through, but also what I do when I face the darkest times, when I'm really up against it. Because one thing that I found myself saying to myself was, I'm not going to quit this. I'm not going to stop this. You're not a quitter. And I really went through this whole reframe in my mind because I was ready to just stop the heat. I was gone. And if you ever come across a situation like that in your business, maybe in a relationship situation, possibly something that you're doing, a project that you're working on, and you just don't freaking want to keep going, I thought I'd share with you an approach that's worked for me now for decades, and it always works. So let me go through this and hopefully it'll unfold clearly in front of you. In her book, Grit, Angela Duckworth wrote, enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare. And I agree with that. I think a lot of people that we see succeed, if you've ever thought of some of the most aspirational, inspirational people you can think of, the likes of Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Anita Roddick, who did the Body Shop business, they all faced immense challenges. So endurance is without a doubt a characteristic that shines through during those moments when things are really tough. This has been an absolutely shitty year in so many ways for me, and yet it's been an inspirational year in so many other ways. And I think it's during those darkest times that you really have to dig deep. And so what I wanted to say to you is this. I want to put a reframe on that. And here's what I want to suggest. See, whether you're writing a project, writing a newsletter, writing a book, starting a business, going online, creating a new brand, whatever it is, I think it is more than just endurance. A lot of people think you're born with endurance, you have this natural sense of endurance. I would argue that endurance can be created as a habit. So how does that work? In my world, endurance is simply the habit of not quitting. So if somebody has the ability to keep going and then just at the point where they want to quit, they don't quit. They find a reason or a way or a method of overcoming that block, and then they continue. They don't quit again. They don't quit again. That's how I felt when I was lying in that bed at that temperature. All of a sudden, if you do that enough times on a regular basis, you've created the ability to have endurance. Characteristic of endurance, I would argue, is actually the forming of a habit where you just don't quit. And even if you feel like quitting, you just keep going. You do that enough times, and now you've got the habit of becoming an endurance athlete or endurance performance person, whatever you want to call it, in life. David Henry Thoreau said, our dreams are our touchstones of our character. It's quite a profound statement. I think I would like to put a frame around all this and say, actually, if somebody has a dream and they have focus and they have enthusiasm and they have the discipline to see that through on a consistent and regular basis, i.e. a habit, now you've got a really strong character. And now you get a sense of who that person is, that character. How many times have you been around people that just give up and just walk away? And the truth is that at some point we've all done it. You may have joined a gym and then stopped going to the gym. You may have started a habit of a morning ritual and then stopped that morning ritual for whatever reason. And you can't beat yourself up in these situations. I've been there. I know this experience. And as I've got older and more tenacious, what I've discovered is actually it's simply a habit that you just have to dig into with a very specific approach to it. I remember when I got my PhD, for years afterwards, and even now to some extent, people would say, oh yeah, I could have done a PhD, but, and then they give me a set of excuses or reasons. Or when I got into property, people would say to me, oh yeah, I did try to get into property, but ... Or it might be, oh yeah, I wanted to become a speaker, but dot, dot, dot. And what I've discovered is people just lay out these excuses in front of themselves. So their aspirations weren't big enough, or was it that their aspirations were big enough, but they hadn't developed the habit of not quitting so that they could then become someone who had endurance. And it's my case I'd like to say today is that if you're watching this, if you found that's a habit you've had in the past of giving up, you can break that by consistently changing certain things you do. I'm not sure it was helped by, if you remember, I remember in the 2000s, there was a video came out called The Strangest Secret. That actually came from a recording from Earl Nightingale called The Secret, or The Strangest Secret. And that came off a book called Think and Grow Rich. And if you want to go all the way back, that link to Power of Positive Thinking, as a man thinketh, what you focus on a consistent and regular basis, you can attract into your life. And I actually totally believe in that. The challenge with The Secret, or The Strangest Secret, is that a lot of people, certainly in the 2000s, said, oh great, this is amazing, it became a phenomenon. And everyone would sit there and visualize, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to attract money to me. But just sitting there doing cool doesn't help. You have to have the consistency behind that. And I sort of developed this formulaic approach in my brain during that period because I saw a lot of people just sitting back and waiting for stuff to happen. But it's just not going to produce the results you want. He wrote it down here for you. So I'd like you to just capture this if you can. It's vision plus a strategy, which a lot of people miss, plus core beliefs that you can achieve what you're looking to achieve. So it's not just the habit of doing something or having the characteristic and the endurance. There's these combinations. You've got to have the vision to get there, a strategy to get there, then have a set of core beliefs that say to you, not that other people put on you, but you believe that you can actually achieve it. And then have the habit of doing what you need to do on a consistent, regular basis with the discipline to implement. And if you do that, you'll get the results you want. And I think that's what was ultimately missing when The Secret came out and people were starting to get frustrated because I'm visualizing, but how come nothing's happening for me? And somebody who's been out in the world speaking for so many years, I've met thousands of people who often said, oh yeah, I could have done this, Dr. O, or I could have done that, or should have. What is it Tony Robbins says? You should all over yourself. I've got another quote here from Jim Rohn, sadly passed away some years back, but we must all suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. And I used to quote that all the time. And if I look back in my life, if you think about the things that you like to have done that you didn't, you think back, you go, oh my gosh, if I'd done that. And there's a point when that method of communicating has to stop. It's like, not if I've done that, I will do this. So the truth is, if you have aspirations and you don't have a habit of developing grit, then the chances are you'll be somebody, and you may have been through this already, this isn't me beating you up because I've had these conversations with myself over the years, you may be somebody that sits and gets frustrated with yourself to the point when, if you're not careful, you just don't do stuff, or people around you that know you're going to try something go, oh yeah, you've done stuff like this before, you're never going to see it through. And so what I developed with this was this technique called a gritty approach, and it's actually an acronym. So if I give this to you now, hopefully this is going to give you the ability to go on and achieve some of the great things that you want to achieve. Even on a small daily basis, you have to apply this on the tiny things, because most habits get formed by doing small things on a consistent and regular basis. Through this journey I've been going through with the cancer that's come into my body, I've had to do things like exercising after meals to burn off sugar and taking a whole bunch of different tablets, both natural ones and some repurposed ones as well, that are helping to block certain pathways for the cancer to get to me. And it's not pleasant. I'm constantly having to get this routine going, but I'm also focused on the end result. I want to cleanse, heal my body and be cancer free. So the reason is big enough. I have 2 beautiful children. I want to live. I find the energy to do this, but afterwards I'll be knackered. But whilst I'm in front of you, I can try and give you the best of myself. So let me give you the acronym. Okay, so here we go. Now it's GRIT, G-R-I-T-T. The G in GRIT stands for goals. And it may sound obvious, but there's no point in starting anything unless you've got a very clear end goal. And I mean crystal clear. Anything that you write down that is a distraction from where you need to get to will literally tug your focus into a different direction. So what I've discovered is that you've got to shut out the noise, anything you might want to suddenly bolt onto that end result. How many times have you got, oh yeah, I want to do this, and while I'm at it, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that. And the problem is all of a sudden you're distracted. So it's got to be absolutely crystal clear. When I was lying there and I had whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes to go, 30 minutes to go, I just said to myself, I want to live. I want to actually have my body cleared of any of this cancer that's come into it. And I was picturing my kids, and I just had this vision of being able to be cancer-free, being able to do the things I love to do, be able to come back and share and be in front of audiences again. There was nothing outside of that vision. I'm lying there being cooked alive, attacking those cells. But the focus was on the end result. I think it was Thomas Edison who said, lazy minds seek quick solutions while diligent minds seek meaningful results. Wow. Think about that. Well, the light bulb says it all really, doesn't it? So what is your meaningful results? What's something that has deep meaning to you that if you're going to do it, you're going to see it all the way through? And I think that's another reason why people have this habit of quitting, because they just don't have enough meaning attached to the very thing that they're focused on. For me, I want to freaking live, which is partly why, I look at people that aren't doing things or sitting around doing nothing or just, can't be bothered. And although I don't have a sense of anger or frustration or annoyance toward them, I look and I go, I just wonder how much those people are going to achieve if they don't have that meaning to their life. So what is that for you? And you've got to do that for every area that you wanted to embark on to develop this endurance, this habit of not quitting. The R in GRIT stands for resilient communication. Now, this is a passion of mine. And if you'd been in that room in Turkey, that clinic treatment room with me, you'd have, in fact, Harminder was, if you've ever listened to our Cicada podcast, and he'll tell you that Ro was literally talking to himself. I was saying to myself, you're going to get through this. You don't quit. This is just one moment in time. 15 minutes more, 10 minutes more, 5 minutes more. I want to live. I love my kids. I'm gritty. I don't quit. The communication had to be all about end result. I'm a winner. That's a phrase that you've heard for years, probably if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, but it works for me. And also I was listening to, and I'll explain this in a minute, the recording from a gentleman called David Goggins, and he was talking about Boat Crew 2, and he tells this story, which I'll come to in a moment. But in Boat Crew 2, basically, they just never quit. He talked about the Navy SEALs training, times when he felt like quitting, but he refused to quit. So I used some of that, reflected it back on myself, and I literally was speaking it out loud, which I know some people say if you speak to yourself, you're crazy. You know what? I think the most inspired people are the people that speak out loudly and speak to themselves and inspire themselves. So start to get crazy and be a resilient communicator when it comes to breaking through. A little bit like this budgie is in our room here while I'm recording. You can probably hear our kid's budgie speaking out loud. It's keeping going. The I in GRIT stands for inspired sources. Where can you go to get inspiration? Like, who inspires you? What stories inspire you? What YouTube videos inspires you? What quotes inspire you? Whatever the person is who's an inspiration to you, dig into that. Whilst I was lying there, I literally thought of David Goggins, and I said to Harminder, can you just press play on my phone on Audible and get chapter 4 up in his book, You Can't Hurt Me? And if you haven't read it or listened to it, it's truly inspirational, certainly for me anyway. It's pretty hardcore, raw stuff. Amazing story, and you can get that on Audible or you can get it on Amazon. What I did was I was listening to his story about how he went through being abused, beaten up by his father, had low self-esteem, ended up in the Navy SEALs, and he'd shot his knee out completely. He'd got bronchitis, he got all sorts of things, but here he was on the beach with another 5 other people carrying this boat and going out to sea and being frozen, and he just didn't quit. I'm listening to that whilst I'm lying in this bed, and he's talking about just never quitting, just keep going. Boat Crew 2, and he's talking about the things that he does to inspire himself. When you're in a position where sometimes you just find the focus is going on the pain you're experiencing or the block, by taking something external and then focusing on that, what you'll find is it removes the emotional connection with what you're going through and gives you a chance to be inspired and to take you towards that goal. So inspired sources of information, people around you, just find it, whether it's music, thumping music, whether it's listening to somebody, whether it's an incantation, whatever it is. Use the I in the GRIT process. The T in GRIT stands for take decisive steps. So for me, it was literally, I can't move my hands, lying there. Everything below here is being heated to 45 degrees. And all I could do is look out with my eyes and said, Can you pull up the phone and can you play this for me? I was strapped in. I couldn't do it. I was strapped. I was physically bound in this machine, this unit. What are the decisive actions you can take at that moment? There's a lady called Marissa Peer who does a lot of great hypnosis tracks and things like that. And one of her things she talks about when you're working through this is direct, instruct, command, compel, and code your mind, your body, to do the things it needs to do. Direct, instruct. Think about that for a minute. So the next time you're caught in this situation and you're starting to go through this gold process, yeah? And then you're starting to get more resilient, and then you've got inspiration. What is the next decisive step? It doesn't have to be massive. What I've found every time I've had a block in my life, as long as I've got one more step to take, whatever it is, you move to that position, you've now taken a step forward. It's as simple as that. It's just a habit, and you have to do it. You can hear my voice is going now. So think about what the decisive step is that you need to put in place in the next block you've got coming up. You can do this on a small scale or a big scale. And if you're coming up with a mental block, look around at other people that have achieved success in what you're trying to do and ask yourself the question, what steps did they do, or what step would they take now in this moment? And finally, the last T in the GRIT acronym is just trust yourself. I think that is something that a lot of people have struggled with over the years. And I mean that sincerely. I think a lot of people struggle because they've lost trust in themselves, their ability to do something. If you've had the habit of quitting, in other words, you don't have the endurance habit, then the key thing is, I believe, that you need to go back into that space and remind yourself that you can do this. Seek guidance from other people around you and ask them questions about what maybe they think is great about your characteristics. But trust that if you've been given with this dream, this vision, this goal, and you've got a desire to achieve it, then you can achieve it, because you wouldn't have been given it, and the universe wouldn't have provided you with that if you haven't got the ability to do it. It's just tweaking these habits. One way to do this, and I talk about this in my book Turning Point, and if you haven't found it, go and have a look on Amazon for it. I've got a whole chapter on beliefs. Create a set of beliefs that reinforce that you have the ability to do this. I'm a warrior. I'm a winner. I can do this. I overcome obstacles. I'm healthy. I'm vibrant. I never quit. Whatever it is for you that you need to say to yourself that is an opposite to maybe a set of negative beliefs that you've had in the past. Trust in yourself is the thing that creates an immense sense of trust in the universe and other people. It has to start with you. So remember, with GRIT, it's a quick process. Get goal clarity, absolute clarity. Resilient communication in everything you do. Speak to yourself in a really resilient way. Inspired sources. Just find people that can inspire you. And then take the next step. What's the next step you need to take? And then trust yourself. If you do those things on the smallest of blocks that you face, you will find it becomes a habit. And before you know it, you're doing it in every situation. You'll even find yourself talking to people saying, okay, so what's our goal here? Let's shift the way we're talking to ourselves. And it becomes an absolute habit. So go out and get gritty. Hopefully this has helped. Sorry about the voice, but as I say, I'm going through these treatments and it's affecting a few things. And I look forward to your feedback. Do drop some comments on here. Give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe. I'm trying to get as many of these messages out there whilst I'm in this place. And a lot of it's going to relate back to the journey I'm on at the moment. It's Dr. Rose signing out. See you on the next video.